Our next part on Longstreet's countermarch on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. We're still on Old Mill Road, and in the distance, you can actually see Big Round Top, the very top of it, but you cannot see Little Round Top. So again, in this area, as the troops begin to head back in the right direction, they are on a piece of ground that now dips down and keeps them out of the sight of the Union artillery and the Union Signal Corps on the Round Tops. Now also, when you think about the Battle of Gettysburg and these epic actions of July 2nd, Little Round Top, Big Round Top, Devil's Den, the Bloody Wheat Field, the Rose Farm, think for a moment that these men had just marched for 5 hours. So when they're launched into this battle, and you hear about these epic names that we just mentioned over and over again, these men were probably beat. They were probably very weary. So the very fact that they were able to launch this attack at 4 p.m. and be very successful and almost take the entire day and win the war is nearly amazing. The Union troops, for most part, had been in their Union fishhook position, waiting and waiting and waiting. And while this, thousands of Confederate troops who had just arrived were being countermarched now to get themselves into position. Okay. As we continue on Old Mill Road, I did mention the home of Dr. Samuel Hall, which you can see the farm over here in the distance in the center of our camera right now. That is a possible site of where Adam Butt may have been hiding on July 2nd of 1863. This, we are continuing on the Old Mill Road. The Old Mill Road will eventually dump us back out on the Fairfield Road near Willoughby Run. And in this area, this is where the countermarch probably gets a little bit more confusing. I'm sure as these soldiers marched here, they also may have seen, possibly even smelled the odor of smoke. And that odor of smoke that they may have smelled or even seen was probably the ruins of the Emanuel Harmon farm, which on July 1st, 1863, was actually burned to the ground by Confederate soldiers as the fighting erupted on the first day's battle. We did take a look at that video, and if you want to go back and watch the video series, the Emanuel Harmon farm. The Emanuel Harmon farm sat right here today where 165 Old Mill Road is. And that farm, of course, was burned by Confederate soldiers. You want to go back and watch that video series, the Emanuel Harmon farm, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. This has been our next part of Longstreet's countermarch, and we'll continue this on our next video. Run here on Old Mill Road. We're continuing on the march of James Longstreet's troops on the afternoon of July 2nd, 1863. And what we're doing is we are finding another position on a lower road. That lower road would be along Willoughby Run, which we just crossed. And this is actually the area that earlier in the morning, Edward Alexander Porter and some of his artillery actually found a route to find the Union Army in the morning of July 1st after General Lee had ordered his 10 o'clock attack plan. As we make a right on the Fairfield Road, we're going to head up here, and the closest road to the original road where the farm was would be Willoughby Run Road today. And this is where the troops would then proceed to head south toward the Round Tops on the afternoon of July 2nd, 1863. And again, as we've traveled, we passed the Butt Farm, the Johns Farm, the Samuel Dixon Farm, and as we make a left up here at the top of the hill onto Willoughby Run Road, we'll pass by the site of the old George Culp Farm as well. Okay, we're making a left here on Willoughby Run Road. Now, Confederate troops, most likely on a dirt road, not on this road today, but on a dirt road crossing over here, then began the march southward along this side, or the western side of Willoughby Run, which is very, very low ground. Willoughby Run Road is right here in the distance. And now these troops can then stay right along Willoughby Run on the low-lying ground and stay out of the sight of the Union signalmen on Little Round Top. To our right, in this distance, right over here in this field, once sat the George Culp Farm, and this would have been one of the farms that they passed as they continued on this counter march of July 2nd, 1863. Our next farm that we're going to pass, that Confederate troops would have passed by, would have been the John Edward Plank Farm. And we did do a video last winter at the John Edward Plank Farm, which was also used as a Confederate. Now passing the John Edward Plank Farm here on Willoughby Run Road. In the distance over here is actually Troublesome Hill, which they were spotted by Union artillery. As we drove, we went on the counter march, but we're now on the low-lying ground, not spotted by Union signalmen on Little Round Top. And these troops would pass by the Plank Farm here, back out almost in a complete circle to the Black Horse Tavern Road, except now they would have remained out of the spotting of Union artillery because they were able to find low ground, which you cannot see in the distance, the Round Tops. This has been our next part on Longstreet's counter march on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. It's Tavern Road, heading down toward the Round Tops. However, the ground is extremely low in this area, and you do not see the Round Tops. And it was this road on July 2nd, 1863, along Willoughby Run, that Longstreet's troops continued their march. And now that we're talking about 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, this is near the end of Longstreet's counter march, and these men are now about to get into position and be put out onto the battlefield, into those battles that we would see. And as we continue our Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook, a lot of the actions on July 2nd, all the actions rather, on July 2nd of 1863 would happen right after this march. So one of the things that you may want to do is watch the march. There is the Pitzer House and the Pitzer Schoolhouse, which once sat right here on this corner. And we'll pick this up in our next video. Tavern Road into the Millerstown Road. This is going to be our final part in Longstreet's counter march. It was those troops that were counter-marched in that area on July 2nd of 1863 that ended up being launched out onto the battlefield from this position right here. Up here in the distance, you can see the Longstreet Tower. When they got to this point right here, these brigades and this division were then put into a battle line right here in our front. And the attacks, all the attacks from July 2nd, from Hood's Texas Brigade to Barksdale's brigade, and all the different brigades, Kershaw's, McClaw, they would all be launched right here from this point. This has been the video series entitled Longstreet's Countermarch on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.